office. Having said that, it's really, if you pull back, it's really how do you access ultra high net worth individuals, family offices, and really it's more about human psychology, right? So it's not just about family offices, because people on family office boards are human, right? So quickly, so I had a great irony. I had a company called WealthX, which is, if you've heard of it, it is the preeminent data source on the world's ultra affluent. Before WealthX, Forbes, McKinsey, Capgemini used to always talk about how many people in the world are ultra high net worth based on surveying 1,000 people or whatever it was. But WealthX was the first to create a data set. It was not built on top of labor statistics, Zip+4 data, or cul-de-sacs, right? In other words, before that, if you had a wealth data set, it basically said you were the same person in a cul-de-sac as the rest of the people in the cul-de-sac. So we built the first open source intelligence where we actually would write 15 pages of a dossier on each person in the world. So when we said that there were 3 women in North Carolina who liked wine and NASCAR and were worth $100 million, there were 3. Not because we did a survey, like McKinsey or someone, right? But because we actually knew them. Or there were 3 families in Indonesia that had a net worth of $700 million or more. Or the founder of Jimmy John's had two choices when he was in high school. His dad came to him and said, either you go to military or I'll give you $50,000 loan. And he started Jimmy John's, right? So we created that data set, and it was the first in the world. So we kind of defined and created the marketplace around the ultra affluent. It's a SaaS-based company. Pretty much every luxury brand, private bank, multifamily office in the world uses it today. So that was great. I enjoyed it. So along the way, because I had proprietary data, I was never Robert Frank. If you guys know Robert Frank from CNBC, he was a close friend. He's a good friend. I never was him, but I was a wealth data guy. So I was the person they would call on to talk about wealth in the media. So, by the way, Lynn is my connection, was my CMO at WealthX. I recruited her from Sotheby's, and she's the reason that I'm here and how I met Julia. So we're going to talk about wealth. And I have a theology degree, right? So how many of you know this saying? Money is the root of all. Anybody else want to comment on this? All right. So this is the wrong saying. Does anyone know the right saying? The love of money. Money is not bad. Money is not bad. It never, just like technology, right? But the love of money is the root of all evil, right? So when we talk about wealth, I always like to start out by reminding us that, right? When I was putting this presentation together, I tried to think about what are the characteristics that if you were on the board of family office or anything really, right, that you were going to hire someone, what would you be looking for? But on the flip side, what should you have? What are the characteristics you should cultivate, right? And I think these are really good ones, and because of my background in strategy consulting, they all had to start with C. So curiosity, understanding current affairs, what's going on. You need to be competent, that's table stakes. You need to have credibility. This is a big, I have to say that credibility is probably one of the biggest issues I see today in family offices dealing with people, because who knows who somebody is, right? And then the ability to connect the dots, because if you can't connect the dots, then you're never getting in, right? Because it's really the only way you get in. Now, this was published in the New York Post. This was found at ATM in East Hampton. A reporter found it, they published it, and so there's a few interesting things to look at here on this ATM stamp. One is 1014 in East Hampton. There's not a lot to do in East Hampton at 1014, right? This person gets out $400. There's a $2.75 fee. They're charged $402.75. The remaining balance in the savings account was $99,864,731. And so a few observations about this. So one, I guarantee you, if you've dealt with billionaires or family offices, this person, the first thing they did when they walked away from the ATM was call the bank and get a refund on the $275. Right? That's first. Second, and I do this because there's a reason, there's a point for this exercise, right? So let's get our creative juices flowing a little bit. who's this person? That's what so that's what they said, right? So, but less specifically, who's this person? Who has 99 million? Use your imagination. Who has 99? Because there's who has 99 million in the savings account? Let me help you. A lottery winner. Maybe this person was a lottery winner. Maybe they just won the lottery and it just got they just got their pay, or they did a structured product where they got paid out and then someone else is making 20% interest on it. That's a whole different, right? Who else could this person be? Yeah. Wait, from where? From Latin. Wait, can I tell you? Can I tell you that I do this exercise typically because it's just a great way for people to challenge them to think. And every single time there's a different, someone like him comes up with something new. I've never heard that. You're right? Now, I've also heard maybe it's a Russian oligarch and he needed some, change. He needed some money for the weekend, right? Hacker, there's a good one, right? Hacker. Who else?
Someone buying real estate.
Somebody that transferred it in. They basically transferred it into this account because they're getting ready to buy some real estate. Right, that's true.
Really good graphic designer.
I don't know how that fits, but well, maybe.
Made a fake receipt.
What about an entrepreneur who just sold their company? Right. Somebody with an exit. What about somebody who just got divorced from his wife and she was, a wealthy family. He's got his money now, or her. Either way, right? Divorce, that's an exit, right? That's another exit.
What about somebody who was inebriated and left it?
Yeah, somebody's inebriated, right? Or maybe it's one of my hedge fund friends and they just got their weekly bonus. They get paid so much, they're like, yeah, it's crazy how much.
Or somebody who needed $400 and Capital One Bank made a big mistake, put $10 million, put $100 million in the account by mistake.
Right. So maybe Capital One.
Next withdrawal is going to be $99 million.
Yeah. Well, don't you want to be the Capital One banker representing this person because what they're making on that savings deposit anyway? So here's the point of this. While it's fun, here's the point. Whoever that person is and how they made that money shapes everything about who they are. It shapes how they look at how they give philanthropically. It shapes how they invest, right? Because if it's an entrepreneur and they lived on McDonald's, or if it's a billionaire, or if it's a trust fund kid who's never made money and therefore watches every penny and is super, So the point is, unless you understand the narrative and the story and really understand it, then you're gonna fail in your ability to access and engage someone, right? Especially if you're leading with your product. That would be the worst thing you can do. So, but it's a good exercise. So money is a narrative. I think that money is a narrative. It's a story. It's a story. And every penny counts, right? So, so two key wins. And I philosophically, I like to think about the concept of wealth. I say it's an amplifier. Wealth takes whatever you are and amplifies it. So if you're a selfish, narcissistic person and you get wealthy, what happens? You get more selfish and narcissistic, except now you can do it across the country, right? Right? Wonder if you're giving, generous, merciful, what happens? And you change things. You create an impact, right? So wealth is an amplifier. And I think that fundamentally, if you boil it down, I think there's two key lenses that people use when they're, especially if you're a family office or you're a billionaire or ultra net worth. You view the world through two lenses: relational networks and your passions and hobbies and interests. For example, if you're at a party and you meet someone, what do? Hey, so-and-so. Oh, I went to school with so-and-so. Or accountant, attorney. Oh, you use so-and-so? Oh, great, I knew the partner. We're always, as humans, looking for connections to try to connect the dots. We're wired that way, right? Now, maybe you're a sociopath, but if you're passionate about, classic Rolls Royces, then you're going to connect with that person. And, maybe you haven't figured out that they have problems, other dysfunctions, right? my investor in WealthX, he was super passionate about Rolls Royces, right? If you tried to talk to him about banking products or anything else, his eyes would glaze over in a second. But if you asked him, as I did once, why the grid on his Rolls Royce was like bent, out of shape, he would tell you an hour later that it was handmade, right? Because he had the same one the Queen had, or Queen used to have, I should say, right? He was super passionate about that from a craftsman's perspective, right? So I thought I'd quickly give you a quick overview of the ultra high net worth market, right? Ultra high net worth defined as 30 million and up. So this is the Longhorn Stadium, right? It basically holds about 100,000 people, right? So, because people talk about data, and I find that people walk away and they're like, I have no context, right? So I'm trying to give you context. So this stadium, imagine 4 of them, right? Then add together the GDP of China and the US, and that's basically the ultra high net worth population. So 400,000 individuals that command 40 trillion in assets right now. I don't know the most recent from WealthX, but this is around the same figures, right? Is that surprising? Maybe you didn't think about it. Who knows? You're like, get on with it. Let's have the drinks, but that's okay. Now, so one other thing that I think is really interesting as you think about accessing kind of the family office world is I feel like the wealth, and I don't know if you guys feel this, and my friends that are at PE, venture capital, everybody's circling around this disruption that's getting ready to happen. And that basically the fundamental wealth management landscape is completely broken the way it's done today, right? So the first big change that I think is going to happen, and my point in bringing these up are these are things that you need to understand as you try to engage. These are background issues, right? So the first one is, it's going to be a while, but AUM fees are going to go away. Now, one of my friends who are like worth hundreds of $1 million that are entrepreneurs want to pay an AUM fee. They don't get it. They don't like it. It actually, it really needles them the wrong way. So I'm telling you, and I speak to a lot of asset managers, you should get ready for this to go away, right? What about family data? So I think the other big shift that we're going to see on the wealth management landscape, and again, this is a mindset for how you approach family offices and ultra high net worth individuals, is we need to start thinking that, and the concept is that they own their own data. How many of you know any financial advisors where if they want to change, it's as easy as a switch versus downloading a CSV file of their data? You know one? Okay. Who is it? Goldman. So if you leave Goldman, but your data's still sitting on Attapart, Goldman, or whatever.
They syndicate it to a third-party service. The reason Goldman's doing it is not for you. Goldman wants a picture of everybody else, so they give you the illusion that you have portability, when in reality, they're providing a service so you have portability with them.
Yeah, but if you leave Goldman, it's not your data that's with Goldman is going to, they'll download and export it, but it's not going to take a day. Like, you can't turn it off, right? No.
I don't know the time frame.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't think any of the big, I don't know the special circumstances around that. What? Go ahead.
I'm about to answer this. There's a very large financial firm that part of the plan they have is make it so hard to move that people just don't.
Exactly.
Well, that's the plan of every financial advisor. No offense.
So actually, the firm, not even the advisor, that the firm is trying to take control, and they can firm client advisors.
Yeah. So, but every RIA, the biggest RIAs, all the platforms, the banks. I don't know any. I know maybe 2 in the United States that say. So this, by the way, though, this company Connect. What Connect does is, if you're a financial advisor, you set up an account, you onload your client. It's their account and their data for the family.
It's
No. I'm a financial advisor. I set this up for you, my client. You upload everything, or I do, but it's my client. It's the client's account. So if they decide that they don't want you, it's a flip of a switch. That's happening though. This debate, this discussion is going to continue to gain momentum around client data. Now, a lot of financial advisors are pushing back on this. They're saying, no, because I want to control the data, right? But this wave is going to happen, from my perspective. And I'm right a lot of the time. So I'm just early. I tried to launch Sharia-compliant real estate products at C.B. Richard Ellis in the early 2000s. That was way too early, right? So anyway, I think the other value proposition and thing that people are looking for is expertise around new asset classes, right? So, and Luxus, I'm on the advisory board of Luxus. It's the first multi-access direct luxury asset. So they're doing tiaras, right? And it's combined with experiential. So if you're an LP in the fund, then you get to go to the Tower of London and see the jewelry directly with Gerard. So it's experiential access and exposure and education. They have a horse breeding and a Stradivarius, right? So they have the #1 musician in the U.S. She is amazing. She's playing the Stradivarius for the next 2 years, so it's active management of the asset, and LPs in the fund get access to her. So this is the future, I think, of alternative assets, right? By the way, luxury, everybody knows luxury because LVMH, and Arnault is jockeying with Elon Musk for who's billionaire in terms of who's going to be the most worth. But direct exposure to luxury that provides education and unique experiences, I think, is interesting, right? Sheikh Mohammed, by the way, his horse is worth over $100 million. Also, if you want a shot for breeding, it's about $1 million per shot for breeding. That's what it means to be a stud, by the way. Just, so anyway. Yeah. Music royalty, obviously all the pension funds and institutional funds are all buying up they're buying up all of the catalogs. I'm predicting the democratization of this asset class. So financial advisors will soon be able to say, sure, here's your stock, bond, and who do you like? Oh, you like Madonna? Great, we got the Madonna ETF. We've got part of her royalty streams from, well now actually because of Deadpool, Madonna's getting a resurgence, right? So that's what happens. That's the active management on the music side, right? So, and so Kate Bush, right? Running Uphill, has been playing for years. Stranger Things picks it up, and now every coffee shop over the last 3 years is playing Running Uphill by Kate Bush. That's the alpha.
Do you remember the two?
Yes. But these are real assets that generate every year. They're not tulips. These are better than bonds. They're non-correlated because guess what people do when they get depressed? They listen to music. And it's all data driven. It's all collected. So there's no bubble though on the music, at least I don't think there's a bubble. So we all know the tokenization, so this gets into, I think, also on the family office side. So many families have physical assets. The question is, and they oftentimes don't have liquidity. So how can you create liquidity with physical assets? And I think, I don't think we figured this out, but I'm saying I think it's going to be really interesting over the next decade. Digital twins too, right? Right. Yeah. You guys remember Second Life? We were talking about MySpace. I think my wife has a avatar running around. I've been trying to connect with it. It's 10 years old, separately to work on my marriage, but I haven't been able to find it yet. But anyway, I also think that the blockchain, and I'm going to talk not about cryptocurrencies, but blockchain will be revolutionary for family offices when it comes to registration and asset ownership. Because if you talk about legacy passing down and looking for ownership of an asset or a painting, those things, right, on blockchain, I think there's a huge opportunity. Even just land, for example. I mean, ownership and rights. This is a platform that offers the ability, once you do a design, so I don't know how much you guys know about yachts, but if you're building a big yacht and it's bespoke, you create a design. This allows the yacht owner to own the design without actually making the yacht, so that they can own it. And then they can make it if they want. So then the ship builder in Dubai can access it and build the yacht if they want it. If not, they put the time into it and they own it, right? So, and some jurisdictions are looking ahead to registration of assets like yachts to use blockchain, because it's well suited for it. It also creates transparency with global agencies who are trying to track assets, right? So this is, does anyone recognize this guy on the right here? Not that guy, this guy. Johann Rupert. He's the CEO of Richemont, which you know owns Cartier, right? I know it's old, but his I know Len's like, yeah, this is old, but so I was in Monaco at the FT Luxury Business of Luxury Conference, and he got up. He was one of the keynotes, and he looked out at the audience. And this was a while back, by the way. But he looked at the audience, and he said, "This is the question." He made this statement. He said, "My biggest concern is that robots are going to replace the middle class." And everybody there was like, "What?" Because this was a luxury conference, right? Why? And he's creating this dystopian world where robots are taking over. And does anybody have any clue why he, who's the head of Richemont, which owns Cartier, all the top luxury brands in the world, a lot of them, sorry, why he would be concerned about the middle class taking over, robots taking over the middle class?
Because they're the ones that buy the biggest labels and the aspiration purchases and walk around highlighting what they have.
Wait, say it again?
They're the ones that walk around highlighting, wearing all the labels, everything else, and the ultra rich usually wear things without labels. So they tend to be more emotional to buy it.
Close. You're good. You're getting close. He was concerned because if there's no middle class, so you're right on the aspirational side. If basically you have the ultra affluent and you have everybody else, who's going to wear a Cartier watch? They're going to be concerned about walking around, right? Because and since then we've become, I think, more polarized than when he actually gave this talk. And they were so jarred by this that I was on my way back through London, so CNN asked me to do this interview, and they were like, "Why is he talking about robots? Like, what? Why is you know?" But it was a very, very astute observation, I thought. But these are the kind of things that the whole point backdrop again on this is the way you should be thinking if you want to approach someone like Johann Rupert, right? To some type of luxury real estate development or whatnot, right? So Mars? Well, Elon Musk, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Elon, actually, that's a good idea. You should start selling. You buy a flamethrower and get a passport to Mars. Perfect. There you go. That's a great idea, actually. He would love that. That's a great idea. So I think with the geopolitical volatility that we're seeing, more and more people are going to be kind of looking at what does it mean to have a second passport, and where should I go in the world? What passport should I have, right? And even U.S. citizens, right? So, privacy is the new luxury. It's a good phrase. Let's look at me. I took that from Nick, right? So one other interesting thing, I know we've seen this here in New York, which is the proliferation of private clubs, right? So you've got, I would say the Battery in San Francisco was kind of the first to kind of really, a long time ago, Michael Birch started it, and he did a really great job. But the reality is, as you guys know, there's R360, which you're going to have a minimum of 100 million. There's Casa Cruz. There's Onda. Actually, Onda is really interesting. It's a Meta Club membership, so it's one membership, and you have access to every private club in the world. Not every, but a lot. So this proliferation of kind of physical memberships and clubs, and I see it only continuing, right? So And then, again, the whole drive for privacy is, I think, a big issue, especially, and we're going to just see more and more of this. I don't know if you guys know that he basically gave up his private jet. Actually, is he a Vista jet? I guess you can't comment on that. They're here, but he did pick up somebody. I forgot who it was. I think I knew. But anyway, so he's now doing that solely because of the issue, as you guys probably read, that on Twitter they can track his plane, right? So, not on Twitter, but they were posting it on Twitter, right? So again, one of the ways I was trying to give you guys some practical tips, like a toolkit. So one of the ways I was thinking about is if you were walking into a meeting, asking the question, what are the top 3 drivers that are really impacting my client or the board? What's really driving change in their industry, right? And really digging deep about it. And then the other one is, what about their passions, hobbies, and interests? Because those are the key things. Walking into a meeting, understanding and digging into those things, because that's really how you're going to connect. And that's really what they care about. Right? And I was at the Forbes Future of Work conference, and there was an executive from LinkedIn who was sitting at my table, and we were talking about these kind of things, and we were talking about how the curiosity as a skill set is so important. But then there's a big question. Can you train someone to be curious? Or is it innate? Are you just born that way? Or can you actually cultivate curiosity in someone, right? But I think curiosity is one of the key skill sets that's going to emerge beyond AI. And by the way, I think the gentleman was right. No one talks about like the internet anymore, right? Like no one says, "Are you using the internet in your company?" Right? We don't talk. Now we did in the beginning, but no one talks that way anymore. And so AI is just a tool. What part of it? Anyway. And so one of the key lessons I would say is that you should think of yourself as an excavator of human nature and narrative, right? Like, be a person that really is interested in digging into the story of someone else and excavating that story. And I think that's part of the curiosity, right? So this is a great quote from Dale Carnegie. I like it. To be interesting, be interested. Ask questions the other person will enjoy answering. Encourage them to talk about themselves and their accomplishments. Remember that the people you're talking to are 100 times more interested in themselves and their wants and problems than in you and in your problems, right? Super simple, super easy to remember. Just get people to talk about themselves, right? I mean, it's true. So you guys remember this is Getty. You guys remember obviously this was a super famous kidnapping case. What most people don't know, though, is that as part of the negotiation, so here's what's interesting. He agreed to pay the ransom after meeting with his tax accounting and finding out that he could write it off. That was one. And then he made it a 4% coupon to repay back the ransom. Right? But the point of this is, what's the mindset behind it, right? I mean, think about the mind behind a 4% coupon, right? To repay back the ransom, right? I guess 4% is pretty good, right? Sorry, that was a bad joke. Anyway, it's fascinating. Here's a good question. And this is, again, talking about how do you pierce beyond, how do you go beyond, how do you dig deeper? So for a while in Silicon Valley, everybody was getting LASIK. Do you guys know why?
Spending many hours looking at the computer.
That's a good guess, but no. So one, there's a whole doomsday, I don't know if you guys have seen this trend, but this actually is this was an old nuclear facility that turned into a luxury condo, and one of the amenities is like a former Navy SEAL team, right? So they get part of it. But this is why people were getting LASIK, right? This is an old quote from the New Yorker, but it's still positive. By the way, can I just say one quick thing? So I think this is a great example of how AI is going to drive monetization in new industries. Because did you guys see the deal Reddit did with OpenAI? Right? So that's brilliant, and I love that. So Reddit is training the AI at OpenAI by licensing all of its data. So what a great business model. It was like, I think like 40 million annual, was it 40 million, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's garbage in, garbage out.
Well, at least they monetized it, you know. Anyway, so Steve Huffman, the 33-year-old co-founder and CEO of Reddit, which is valued at that time was $600 million to 2015. When he arranged to have laser eye surgery, he underwent the procedure not for the convenience or appearance, but rather for a reason he doesn't usually talk about how much. He hopes that it will improve his odds of surviving a disaster, whether natural or man-made. If the world ends, and not even if the world ends, but if we have trouble, getting contacts or glasses is going to be a huge pain in the butt. He told me recently. Without them, I'm screwed. Right? So that was why that was the reason people in Silicon Valley were getting LASIK. Because basically they were saying, if there's a zombie apocalypse, I don't have to fumble around for my glasses. Like they were doing risk management of 1% chance of something, right? My point is, that's an example of digging deeper, right? This is one of my favorite quotes, actually, because this is so antithetical to who we are today. Everyone who was ever a guest of Theodore Roosevelt was astonished at the range and diversity of his knowledge. Whether his visitor was a cowboy, or a Rough Rider, a New York politician, or a diplomat, Roosevelt knew what to say and how was it done. And the answer was simple. Whenever Roosevelt expected a visitor, he sat up late the night before, reading up on the subject in which he knew his guest was particularly interested. Can you imagine staying up through the night and reading several books on something that you were meeting the next day on something they're interested in? I mean, as a skill set, right? Anyway, so I think I'm. How am I doing on time? I think I'm good. Let me just see. So. The other thing, connecting the dots is so important because, and the data shows a referred prospect is 500% more likely to close because it comes through a relationship. We all know that intuitively, but the data shows it. So the question, but the downside risk of coming in through a network is like a whole inventing Anna scenario, right? Or Madoff, right? That's the challenge. And so I think due diligence and the ability to do due diligence is so much, already is so important, but how can you do quick due diligence on someone? Not only them, but their relationships, right? So I think this is going to be a key issue. This is an article I wrote, by the way, about the downside risks of connecting dots and going through networks. So I think open source intelligence that maps companies and their directors and their beneficiaries in emerging markets and the U.S. instantly using AI through open source data is going to be the kind of thing that is critical, right? I mean, how do you, if you're a family office and you're meeting with a company, what due diligence do you do other than look at their investment docs and PowerPoint and use an AI to summarize it for you? Do you look at what open source intelligence says about that person and their relationships and their networks? Right? Or do you compare that person and every entity they're connected to every one of the OFAC, all the lists in terms of every list that's put out there in terms of people you're not supposed to meet with? So I see the convergence of due diligence and risk significantly. By the way, I'm on the advisory board of this AI company which does real-time due diligence using open source intelligence and data on individuals and companies instantaneously. And I think that's a huge value. And I think that's where AI actually is super valuable. Can be, right? Because the world checks of the world, their data sets, I don't know if you guys know WorldCheck. WorldCheck is owned by Thomson Reuters. It's probably one of the leading anti-money laundering KYC data sets. That's it. So, any questions? I I left Tom. Any question? I know we're headed to cocktails, so any questions? And you can also grab me some cocktails. No? I think we got it all.